Why does advertising so often try to scare us? Think about insurance ads. They don't tell you how happy you'll be with coverage. They remind you of what could go wrong without it. Fear sells. And here's why. Psychologists have found that people react far more strongly to the possibility of losing something than to the chance of gaining something. This is called loss aversion. Imagine you lose $100 from your wallet. Now imagine you find $100 on the street. Which moment feels more intense? For almost everyone, the loss hurts almost twice as much as the gain feels good. This isn't a bug in our brains, it's survival logic. Paying attention to threats, dangers, and potential losses gave our ancestors a better chance of staying alive. Today, it's called the negativity bias. We notice bad news faster, remember it longer, and react to it more strongly than to good news. Marketers know this instinctively. That's why so many campaigns emphasize what you might miss out on or what you might lose. Phrases like, "Don't miss this chance," "Protect your savings," "Act before it's too late." They don't just inform you, they trigger that ancient survival system in your brain, the one that's always on high alert for losses. And this raises a question. If losses hurt more than gains, what happens when the exact same outcome is framed as a gain or as a loss? That's the famous framing effect. Here's a strange truth. The way information is framed can completely flip our decisions, even when the numbers are exactly the same. This is the framing effect. A classic medical study asked people to judge a risky operation. Group A heard, the survival rate is 90%. Group B heard, the death rate is 10%. Both statements described the exact same reality, but most people in Group A supported the operation, while in Group B, support dropped sharply. Just changing the frame, life versus death, shifted the decision. Now think about marketing. Even though the math is identical, the loss frame feels scarier and therefore more persuasive. Another distortion comes from the endowment effect. Once something feels like it's yours, you value it more. That's why free trials and first month on us offers work so well. Losing what you already own, even if it was just a trial, feels painful and it pushes you to buy. And then there's the status quo bias. People fear change and prefer to stick with what they already have. Advertisers and politicians exploit this by warning about the risks of leaving the current path. Don't risk losing what you know. But fear doesn't just distort how we see outcomes, it also twists how we think about probabilities. That's where things get even stranger. Fear doesn't just change how we see outcomes, it also warps how we think about probabilities. What's likely and what isn't. Take the certainty effect. If something is guaranteed, we love it. Far more than logic would suggest. That's why ads saying 100% protection or guaranteed results grab us instantly. Our brain treats certainty as priceless. On the flip side, there's the possibility effect. We overreact to tiny probabilities. That's why lotteries are so attractive. The chance of winning is near zero, but our brain still fixates on the possibility. Marketers tap into this with messages like, "It could happen to you," and then there's the fourfold pattern from prospect theory. It shows how we flip between risk-averse and risk-seeking depending on whether outcomes are framed as gains or losses, and whether probabilities are high or low. For example, when the chance of a loss is small, we take it very seriously, even irrationally. That's why people buy insurance for unlikely events, like losing luggage on a flight. So fear doesn't just make us exaggerate losses, it also makes us misjudge probabilities. But there's another layer. Fear makes messages stick and spread. Say something scary often enough, and people will start believing it, even if it isn't true. This is the illusory truth effect. In one famous study, people were shown random statements, some true, some false. The more often they saw a statement, the more likely they were to believe it, regardless of its accuracy. Fearful messages exploit this perfectly. Repeat the same danger over and over, and it feels real. It connects with another bias, confirmation bias. We're more likely to accept scary information if it fits what we already believe. That's why fear-based ads and political campaigns don't have to convince everyone. They just need to reinforce the fears of those already half convinced. And finally, there's cognitive ease. The simpler the threat, the more credible it feels. A slogan like, "They're taking your jobs," works because it's emotionally clear, while complex statistics require effort. And effort is the enemy of persuasion. And this leads us to the bigger picture. Fear-based communication doesn't just sell products, it shapes society. Fear doesn't just make us buy insurance or click an ad, it can change elections, spread misinformation, and polarize entire societies. Fear grabs attention. Studies on social media show that false news spreads 6 times faster than the truth, because fear and outrage trigger stronger reactions than calm, hopeful stories. For marketers, fear is an incredibly powerful tool, a well-crafted message about what you might lose can drive sales faster than any promise of gain. But for society, there's a darker side. Constant fear-based communication erodes trust, increases anxiety, and divides communities. That's the ethical dilemma. Fear works too well, and once people learn to see the world mainly through the lens of threats and losses, it becomes harder to shift back to hope, collaboration, and long-term thinking. So whether it's a brand, a politician, or a social movement, the formula is the same. Emphasize the loss, exaggerate the risk, repeat the fear. It works. The question is, should we let it?